Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our week 26 of Just One Thing for Health, where we ask doctors what is the one thing they would like to see people change. And of course, there are many others too, but one thing at a time. And so offering people we can support with a baby steps program to make the changes to a healthier lifestyle. And we've covered lots of topics and hope you've seen them, and you can find them all on the website under the member library. Tonight, we have a couple who are doctors from Canada, and you've probably seen their challenge video about cooking without oil. And also, we have with us Lori DiPietro Stanton, who is a certified plant-based nutritionist and coach, to ask some questions of Doctors Rayapudi. So sorry about that. With that,
we've been called raisin pudding, Dr. Raisin Pudding.
Raisin pudding.
Sounds delicious.
That is, and of course, plant-based. So with that, Lori, go ahead. You have some questions you'd like to ask, and look forward to a wonderful conversation here.
Absolutely. So I just want to thank Pete for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be here. Pete and I are in the States, but the doctors are in Canada. And so they have a really unique program where well, I'm going to let them describe it, but they're really helping to immerse people in a plant-based, no oil experience for 3 days and really help them understand what that transition is all about and hold their hand through that process. And so I guess we should probably start out by having you guys talk a little bit about yourselves and specifically about this awesome program that you have.
So first of all, we want to make sure if the connection is okay. I mean, looks like the internet connection is going on and off. And if you're able to hear us.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
We both are medical doctors, and I work as a surgeon, and my wife, she's a preventive medicine expert and lifestyle medicine specialist. So we've been not only taking care of patients with modern medical methods like the advanced surgeries and medications and all, but we also specialize in nutrition. So we created a program to help people to, instead of managing their disease, get rid of it. Help people, educate them about their bodies and their mind and the food, and then empower them with the skills to how to cook, how to shop, how to eat outside, and then help them create a supportive environment to reach their health goals. So we do this in a 3-day format, in a workshop setting, in a group setting, where they learn this stuff, and also they get to taste over 60 different foods in 3 days. And their taste buds literally change, and we also inspire them. We have our previous participants who are doing so well. They come back and share their stories. And it's such a beautiful thing to see the transformation happening within just 3 days, where some people just come, they're on the fence, whether they're at the right place or not. But by end of 3 days, they're empowered to just take on and go with it.
So basically, we bring 40 years of clinical and research experience.
2020.
So you might be wondering, they don't look so old. So combining this clinical and research experience, so we have created a system that helps not only for them to see, okay, what to do, but even like how to do it, like when you think in terms of, it might look simple, like making a food change or like any habit, but it takes a lot of effort to make that change. So like we also combine uh, the research about like even how to make that change. So during this 3 days itself, like people, they're amazed to see, because first day when they come, they're thinking, okay, can I do this? Okay, we know that eating healthy is good, so that's not something new for us, but like how are we going to make that shift? But when they learn all the techniques how to make that shift, that's where the magic happens. So just even those 3 days, they're able to see that they're losing weight despite eating their stomach full. And they are able to see other changes too, like for people who are on diabetic medications or even blood pressure medications, just over the course of 3 days, they're able to see their sugar readings come down, and even their blood pressure readings coming to normal. They are amazed, because like for 25 years they have been using this medication, and just over 3 days, like how come we are able to see that change? So they're able to see those powerful changes, based on what they learn during the workshop.
So let me ask you guys, were you from the beginning, were you incorporating, you know, in your combined 40 years experience, from the beginning, were you always having a focus on nutrition, or did you start out differently and then hone in on nutrition over time?
Yeah, we were not like this before.
Yeah, I was like, I'm a traditionally trained surgeon, and like in US residency system. So for me, a chance to cut is a chance to cure, right? So patient shows up with any surgical issue. My first mode of thinking was, okay, what can I do for the patient? That I did that for first 2 years of my practice. And soon I realized that my patients, despite offering them the advanced surgical treatments, that they're not doing so well. For example, if the patient had gallstone disease and I take the gallbladder out, and like, within 6 months later, she's coming with peptic ulcers, or like diverticulitis, which is inflammation of the bowels. Or this patient, like a couple of years later, ended up in the hospital with a heart attack or something. So I've had patients who had colon cancer. I take the cancer out, do the surgery, but a year later have a recurrence, and take the cancer again, and a year later have a recurrence in the liver. So around 2.5 years of time, I started feeling that maybe I was not doing the right thing, and but I wasn't sure what's going on, despite offering the most advanced treatments. And around that time, I happened to see Forks Over Knives. One, it's just on Netflix time, and I saw Forks Over Knives, and that rekindled my interest in the connection between food and health. And then we dived in, looked at the research of Dr. Campbell, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, Dr. Michael Greger, Dr. John McDougall, Jeff Novick, and and then we went back to the science. It's like, she is a scientist, and we love the mechanisms. When we went back to the research, and all this information has been there for the last 40-50 years, published literature. And the more we looked, the more we saw how powerful the connection between the food and health. And when we started applying that with our patients, like in the clinic setting, it was hard to do in the beginning, because it's one-on-one. Eventually, she's bringing the research experience and the behavioral management, piece. And then we decided to come up with this group program in a workshop setting. So it was it's multiple steps in evolution that happened over a few years.
Okay, that is his story. Okay. So personally, for me, I had always had the quest, okay, like how can we lead a disease-free life? Like as a doctor, having seen so many deaths, so like I was more interested in prevention. So that's why I got trained in the basic science of disease prevention. And for me, always the question was, can we lead a life without having any disease, without having experiencing any chronic lifestyle illnesses? And surprisingly, the answer was yes. And it was a very simple solution. Like, you do not have to spend millions of dollars to do that. Like, when you're just eating like whole grains, fruits, legumes, vegetables, nuts and seeds, that's all you have to do. But like, what I found is, even though that's a simple solution that's right in front of our eyes, this is not something simple to do, or even to bring about that change. Like, it takes enormous effort. So that's where like my main interest was, like how to bring the change on a population level, not with just one person, but on a population level. So with that interest, and that's when like we developed this program uh, to see the effects of that. So even though, I mean, the solution was simple, but to bring about that change was not so simple.
So a solution is simple, but people mistake simple for easy. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy to do. And it's like a skill. And for people to learn the skill, they need to understand the mechanics of it and the hurdles. And it's also a learning process for us. I mean, this is not something that we were trained in medical school and residency training to work with people on making the change. So we had thousands of hours of education in taking care with medications and surgeries and all, but asking people to change what's on their plate.
Right.
Yeah.
So how, and I was asking you this a little bit earlier before we really formally came on, but speaking of the scientific part of it, there is so much science to support a plant-based diet, but it's been very difficult to get that science mainstream so that people really understand how transformative it is. And then the Canadian Food Guide came out, and it was very supportive of a plant-based diet. So I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about what kind of changes the Food Guide made, and how that's impacted your ability to get through to people about a plant-based diet.
Like, let me go back even like 5 or 6 years, like when we came here, and in the hospital, whenever like Arjun used to talk about serving plant-based meals, or even talking about plant-based diet, his colleagues, the doctors, were very skeptical. The dietitians in the hospital, they were very skeptical. And of course, patients were like, no. And so like even everyone would make fun of him too. Like even when we proposed, like they're like, you guys are the weirdest guy. I mean, like nobody, like even the colleagues, I mean, they're not proposing that. But over the course, what happened is when they were seeing the changes in the patients, so whoever like attended our workshop, when they were able to see the changes, then little by little they became, they opened up. But what really did the magic was when the food guide came. So since the scientific evidence is there and even the policy is in place, so then people were more open. To accept that.
So for people in the US who are watching it and haven't seen the Canada Food Guide, some beautiful things happened with the new Canada Food Guide. First of all, if you look at the picture, it's beautiful. Like it's the plate, it's 50% fruits and vegetables. It's like true. Half of it is fruits and vegetables, and then the 1/4 of it is whole grains, and then 1/4 of it is, it says, protein, choose plant-based protein more often. So, it's anywhere the way you make it, it's at least 80 to 100% plant-based. So, which is a huge step. And they removed the food groups. Like previously, the food guide or Canada Food Guide used to talk about the dairy food group, the meat food group. They removed dairy as a food group. So that was a really good step a huge step in the right direction. When it comes to meat, they said even when it comes to they clubbed it under protein, but they said choose plant-based protein more often. So I think this is a huge thing. Like it's a groundbreaking thing. Maybe in the next Canada Food Guide, I don't think even the meat will be out of it. It will be, most of it will be plant-based, and it might be something, it might say something like eat meat at your own risk, something like that.
Great, and that's amazing. And so how, you said that has really affected your ability to get the message out there, that ever since that happened.
Yeah, one thing is in the hospital, they're become more open, like the dietitian and the cafeteria. It's, we could talk about the hospital food, the cafeteria food. It's some of it is absolutely atrocious. You could go buy fried chicken and chicken wings and fries and gravy and biscuits and all the hamburgers. You can buy all of this.
And also junk food, like chips, Coke.
Yeah.
And
it's like, you're selling the same food, the foods that cause the disease on the same floor the patients are on, right? So it's, but we're gonna see some shift in that. We're going to sit with the hospital dietitian and the cafeteria manager to come up with a plant-based menu. So we are having, I've had many of my inpatients who were in the hospital, like where I stressed that I wanted my patients to be served the plant-based foods for medical reasons. So the hospital accommodated that, but now it's more open. That's one thing. The other thing is we also had some requests from the family practice residency program to teach and talk to the family practice residents to talk about plant-based nutritional therapy.
That's amazing. That's really, like you said, because so many of our doctors, Western at least, are not, that's just not part of their training. Over their years and years of training, that's just not where the focus is. So that's great that you guys are able to talk to them. It's exciting.
Yeah. So it's it actually makes our job a bit easier because the science is out there now. The Canada Food Guide is out there now. We can focus on instead of arguing about the small little things about science. Now we can say, guys, it's there. How can let's find ways how we can transition quicker. And I think that's where our expertise comes in. Like we have done 13 workshops in the last 3 years. Over 300 people finished the program, and we can, we tell them like, give us 3 days, and we will show you how to add 10 to 20 years to your life and get off the medications.
So you talked about the behavioral standpoint, which I know very well from what I do as a plant-based nutritionist is huge. You can give them the information, but the behavioral component, which enables them to really make the change, is so important. So can you talk about, what do you think people's biggest barrier is when it comes to making the change? Like, what do you find yourselves working with them most on when it comes to behavior?
When it comes to behavior, one thing we have to keep in mind is knowledge is not enough. For example, like if you take smoking, for example, nobody tells you that smoking is good for you. The schools do not advocate that smoking is good for you. Neither parents advocate to their kids. And even the doctors do not tell their patients that smoking is good for them. So despite that, people smoke. And there is a lot of scientific evidence out there that smoking causes cancer and other things. So even though people knew that it's not good for them, the behavior was still there. what made the change or the biggest impact was when the policies were in place, when there were no smoking zones at public places. That's when the rapid shift happened. Even before the policies were made, the incidence of smoking was still high. But from then onwards, people were really able to see the change. I mean, the prevalence and incidence really came down after that. And even with when it comes to food, I mean, when you think about food, it's not just something that you have every day. It's associated with culture, your family, your relationships. And it reminds of you a lot of things. And even so, when you really want to change that food, like you have to make sure that all these things, are put in place. So what do you do when you're stressed out? So even though you know that the chips are not for you, but that's the first thing that you go reach for that. So in terms of behavioral changes, if we keep in mind the three things, so having the knowledge that, okay, in our case, okay, plant-based diet is good for us and maybe having junk food is not good for us. So having that knowledge helps. The other thing is having the skills to make that change. Skills in terms of how am I going to cook plant-based meals? How is my shopping cart going to look like? What ingredients I need to buy? When I'm going for my social outings, how do I navigate social situations? What do I cook when I have company in my house? Or what do I do for my Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas? Like, what am I going to cook? And am I going to fit with my friends, with my community? So those are the skills that you have to learn to navigate all those. And the third thing is support. And support is very crucial because you don't want to be that single person doing, because you do want, we are social animals, so we want to fit in a group. So, and sometimes we look for approval. Okay, if I'm doing this, even if my family members are doing this, you feel happy, rather than like if you're just the one doing and there's a lot of resistance from other people, then it really becomes hard. But when you put these three puzzles and when you do these three things, change happens, and it happens in a sustainable way. But even if one of the ingredient is missing, the change doesn't happen in a sustainable way. Like initially you try hard to bring that change, but that doesn't last long. For example, even if you have the knowledge and you have the support, but let's say if you don't have the skills, that change doesn't happen. If you have the knowledge and skills but not the support, still the change doesn't happen. So when you keep these three things in place, the behavior change will happen automatically.
Great. And so given that, what kind of, so you have this 3-day program, what kind of support then do you provide as after the program?
I'm sorry, the voice got cut off for a brief. Could you ask that again?
Absolutely. So what sort of support do you provide after the 3-day program to speak to, you know, what you're saying about that support aspect?
Yes. So for our program, support is a huge key. So while people are in the workshop, so since it happens in a group setting, so people form groups, a group of 3 or group of 4 people, where they check in with each other on a daily basis or a weekly basis, whatever is convenient for them. That is one level of support. The other level of support is we assign a mentor to that group. So these mentors are people who already have transitioned to plant-based lifestyle, like who have attended our previous workshop and have successfully transitioned to this. So this mentor is another level of support. So whenever these people have challenges, they seek assistance from their mentor. The third layer of support is it's us mostly, like in terms of like whenever in terms of adjusting their medications or like whatever challenges or whatever health issues and other things that they come across. That's another layer of support. And there is also another support, like all of these people are in a secret Facebook group where they can ask any question. It's a safe space where they can ask. I mean, nothing seems trivial or a stupid question. So where people can pose the question or ask, okay, where do I get this or how do I do this? It's not about only sharing the successes, but also sharing their challenges and how to overcome those challenges. And on top of that, we also do a weekly support group meeting, which is online as well as in person, where we demonstrate. So the theme of the support group is we choose a topic and talk about that particular topic. And we also show, we have a cooking demonstration. So every week every week people learn new recipes, new ways of cooking. At the same time, they're able to taste it and they're also able to see how to cook.
So it's ongoing.
Yes.
The journey doesn't end after 3 days.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, that's the one thing we have seen multiple programs, but one thing we're really proud of is the what we are able to accomplish after the program, because most of the programs and there is a lot of information happens during the program, but after you go home, you're on your own. But here we've been able to get them to where they want to get to with this all the multiple layers of support that Shobha just mentioned.
It sounds like you're really creating a community.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Because there is fascinating research in this. Like, if you have a chronic disease or overweight, then you have a 70% chance that you will be overweight or have chronic disease. So we say, like at the workshop, like, you got fat and sick as a group, so you're going to get healthy and light as a group. Because it's hard to change. Like, you could change by yourself, but if you're working in a group, it feels a little bit more relaxed and more fun.
Right. So another thing I was wondering about, if you could talk about a little bit, I don't know about, I think this is true in Canada as well, but I deal a lot personally, not only with nutrition, but with weight loss. And so something I hear every single day is about the keto diet, and how everyone needs to do keto, and how that is the answer. Keto, for those people who aren't familiar, which I would doubt if there's anyone who's not familiar at this point, but it reduces your carbohydrate intake to 5%, about 5%.
Yeah.
So I noticed on your credentials that you have studied the starch solution. And so I wanted to know if you guys could talk a little bit about, your studies in that area, and you could combat this information that's out there that, keto is the answer to health.
So if you look at keto diet, if you look at the history of low carbohydrate diet, which dates back to 1800s. So this low carbohydrate craze was always there. So earlier it was in the form of Atkins diet. And there was also a very funny diet. It's like where people drink a lot of alcohol, and so even that used to be a very famous diet in 1800s. And then came like paleo diet. I mean, this are, if you look at it, these are all examples of low carb diet. And keto is also a low carb diet. So when you look at this low carb diet, it ranges from 5% to 15% the carbohydrate ratio. So today it's keto, tomorrow there will be something else. So this low carb craze will take some or other form of name, but since at present we are dealing with the keto diet. So when you look at keto diet, there are a lot of myths going around that, like, okay, it causes weight loss, and it also reverses diabetes. It's also useful for some forms of cancer, and you will hear a lot of things. When common public hears about it, it's very difficult for them to differentiate between the myth and fact. Because when you look at, there are no long-term studies in keto diet. Like even in keto diet, when they refer to long-term, it's referring to like 6 months or 1 year, nothing beyond that. But when you look at plant-based or other literature, like you have studies that have studied populations for more than 2 years. So when in terms of keto diet, when you look at those studies, yes, in short term, they do cause weight loss. But when you look at weight loss for keto dieters and the other, the weight loss, it gains a plateau stage after 6 months or after 1 year. And then when you look at the difference in weight loss for people doing keto diet and other diets, there's not much difference. And similarly, like it's touted to, I mean, if you want to build endurance and all that. But when you really look at the literature, it doesn't say that it increases your endurance or other levels. The reason it became famous because back in 1800s, it was used to cure type 1 diabetes. Because at that time, type 1 diabetes was like a death sentence. Because insulin, it was invented around 1900s, like 1921. So if you want to prolong the life of a type 1 diabetes, so people used to look for alternative source of fuel. So if not glucose, maybe body can live on ketones. So that's when it really became famous. And people used to use that as an alternative method because they just wanted to prolong the life of type 1 diabetes. But right now, like with insulin and other measures, with the advancement of medical science that we have, we don't have to depend on that. So, and similarly, even there were cases of epilepsy where keto diet helped, because again, for the brain, if you want to look for alternate source of fuel, and in certain population, there is a gene which has to transport glucose to the brain, and if that is absent, so in those certain people, it's difficult for the brain to receive the glucose, and you see all those sort of symptoms.
And
so for those,
well, the research that I did, that's what I saw was the, for epilepsy. And even then, they were very cautious that it was short term and only to be undertaken with under a doctor's supervision.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, even in that case, like ketones was used as an alternate source of fuel. So I mean, so there are a few cases where they use ketones, but when you're really using ketones, the body is getting a message that it's in the starvation mode. So that doesn't help in the long run. In the short run, that's fine, but it's not going to help for a long term. When it comes to weight loss, yes, even you can have weight loss with chemotherapy. That's why even some people take up smoking, thinking that it will cause weight loss. So, but there are healthier ways to, for weight loss. So it's the same thing. So keto diet is not something magical, or when it comes to weight loss, there are other ways you can do it.
Right.
See, my area of work is more than 50% of my work is gastroenterology, like stomach, gut, gallbladder. Like this is if you come to my clinic on Wednesday, like tomorrow is Wednesday, I have at least 35 to 40 patients, and 80% of them are due to various gut related problems. And the number one reason for why people get peptic ulcers, acid reflux, gallstones, irritable bowels, colitis, hemorrhoids, fissures, it's because fiber.
Lack of fiber.
Lack of fiber, lack of fiber. They're not eating enough fruits and vegetables. They're not eating enough whole grains. They're not eating enough beans and nuts and seeds. And they are gorging on meat, cheese, and dairy.
And they're now in the United States, the people that have come to me with those types of problems and said, hey, I need to change my diet, they've said things like, I can't though, because my doctor is telling me that I can't have lettuce, beans, nuts, seeds. It's all of the fiber stuff that they need.
Yeah. So it's unfortunately, people are misinformed. There's a lot of publicity, marketing campaigns about ketogenic diet. But the thing is, the evidence is it's not backed by evidence. And it's quite dangerous. Like we know some family members. Actually, I see at least 2 or 3 patients every clinic who ended up in my office with acid reflux or gallstones just because they switched to keto diet like in last 2 or 3 weeks. Because see, when you are in a ketogenic diet, like the diet is heavily based on meats and dairy products, or like cheese, butter, and then so what we are dealing with is tons of animal protein and tons of fat. The more protein you eat, the animal protein, the more acid stomach has to make. And the more fatty foods we eat, like the cheese, butter, like oils, the more fatty foods we eat, the slower the gut gets. Like the gut slows down, the stomach slows down. So that when you have a bag, like a stomach bag full of acid, and it is slowing down to empty, that's a good recipe for acid reflux.
Okay.
Right? And one thing that we had out of 300 patients, people who did the workshop, 87 people had acid reflux that came to the workshop. They were on medications. Can you guess how many of them reversed their acid reflux out of 87?
87?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
It's
like we started doing the workshop for diabetes, weight loss, heart disease. But 2 things that we saw consistent reversal very quickly is acid reflux and arthritis.
Right.
Right. Ketogenic diet.
The acidity causing all the inflammation with joint problems. Yes.
Oh, that's only one mechanism. Like, you have animal protein itself increases inflammation. And then you have the meats and dairy products. These are loaded with bacteria. And so when you eat them, there is a increase in the endotoxin levels in the blood. So that's endotoxemia. Then you have another mechanism called the Neupogen 5C, which is an inflammatory molecule. Then the scientists even discovered a newer molecule. It's called TMAO, trimethyl amino oxide, right?
I've heard of this.
Too much foods of animal origin, like TMAO. So when you're eating steak and cheese and eggs, there is carnitine in it and there is choline in it, and that gets converted into TMAO, and that increases inflammation. So there is one more mechanism. It's called heme iron. Like the people. Iron that is coming from the meat, it's more inflammatory. So I think we just laid down at least 6 mechanisms, but there are at least 10 mechanisms that we know. But the thing is, there are so many mechanisms that we don't know. See, what we know, we think we are so smart about this, but what we know is very little.
Right.
Compared to what we...
But it's awesome though, because what we know, like you're saying, is enough. We know enough that we can start to make the turn. But yeah, who knows what we don't know at this point?
Yes. See, the thing is here is what we know. What we know is a plant-based diet is simple, safe, and very effective to reverse chronic diseases. Okay. But we know quite a bit about how it works, but I think we're still discovering many different ways how it works. We don't have to wait till we understand every step about how it actually works. We know it works. Like, Dr. Esselstyn showed that you can actually reverse, like you can open up clogged blood vessels. Clogged blood vessels without stents, without statins, without bypass, just by changing to a plant-based diet. And in fact, it happened with my dad. As he had diabetes, he had high blood pressure, he had high cholesterol, and he was having shortness of breath, and he ended up having an angiogram which showed 90% blockages in 2 out of the 3 main blood vessels. One cardiologist said he needs stents, another cardiologist said he needs bypass surgery. But my dad decided to give it a try, a plant-based diet. Initially, there was a lot of resistance, but there was back and forth. But said, Dad, you got to try it for 2 weeks. And he only gave us 2 weeks to try. But within 2 weeks, he was walking longer distances with no shortness of breath. In 3 months, he came off of his diabetic medications, blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications. 6 months later, he was able to finish the heart treadmill stresses that he could not finish before. And this was 4 years ago. It's this March, we celebrate 4th anniversary without stents and without bypass. And doctors told him that he needs to stents or bypass the same week.
Yeah, that is an incredible story. And
Yeah.
and I have a similar story, except that the story didn't end that way. My grandma had a massive heart attack at 47. And that was a very long time ago. And they did not give her any information about how to change her diet. She had a quadruple bypass. And they told her she'd have to have another one in 10 years, and she did. And then she got early onset Alzheimer's and died in her early 60s. And a lot of what I do is in honor of that, because I wish I had known, or someone had been able to tell her, because the information has been out there for a long time, but it's been so hard to pull that into the mainstream and into the medical community. And so it was really heartwarming to hear your story about your dad, because I'm sure that that's an amazing victory for you guys.
Yeah.
So as we sort of near the end of our hour, I know you have a challenge for everybody this week. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, so like our challenge was about oil. Oil is a big problem, not just for carnivores, because people who are eating omnivore, carnivores diet, they're eating a lot of oil. Even for the plant-based eaters, people who go on a plant-based diet, it's a huge spectrum. Plant-based lifestyle is a huge spectrum. At one end, you have whole food plant-based way of eating, where you're eating unprocessed or minimally processed whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. On the other end, really, really junky processed foods. And you can have donuts and chips and pop and French fries and have cookies, and that's all vegan. It could be all vegan, right? So
they're junketarians. That's what we call it in the United States. Is a junketarian.
Yeah. So we have had encounters with some of the vegan way of eating people who came to the workshop, and they were feeling weak, tired, arthritic, and when they switched to whole food plant-based way of eating, got rid of the oils, got rid of the processed stuff, they had more energy, and their arthritis improved. So getting rid of oil is not just important for the omnivores, it's also important for the so-called the people who fall in the plant-based way of eating. And
yeah.
Can you just say a little bit about you guys did such a great job in the video, but for anyone who maybe hasn't watched it, to explain how the oils are harmful, what's happening in your body when you consume them?
Yeah. When you look at oils, it's processed. For example, if you want to take olive oil, for example, so when you take olives, they have nutrients. They have vitamins, minerals, little amount of protein. But when you look at olive oil, it has no nutrients. I mean, there are no vitamins.
Except for a fat.
It's pure,
pure
yeah,
liquid.
Yeah, it's pure liquid fat. I mean, to make 1 tablespoon of olive oil, you're squeezing like around 35 olives to make 1 tablespoon of olive oil. So you're taking out the fiber, the vitamins, minerals, and everything. If you look at oil, like it's highly calorie dense. I mean, just 1 tablespoon of olive oil, it's giving you 120 calories.
You have to actually run like a mile and a half on the treadmill to burn that.
Yes.
1 tablespoon, and many people, without thinking about it, maybe use 1 or 2 tablespoons for breakfast to make pancakes or something, and then they make this big salad and they pour that olive oil, right? So that's another 2 or 3 tablespoons, and like maybe make a stir fry or something for supper, another 2 or 3 tablespoons. So people are, without even knowing, you can easily consume 500 to 600 calories of oil without knowing about it.
And I understand that it's roughing up the insides of your arteries. It's actually
So that's such an important thing. Like it damages the inner lining of the blood vessels, the endothelium. Dr. Robert Vogel is a researcher, cardiologist. He showed that olive oil, it activates clotting factor 7, just like butter does. It decreases the response of the blood vessels, which we call flow-mediated vasodilation. It interferes with that function of the blood vessel, so it damages the blood vessels like from inside out. That's one thing. Then they also all oils increase inflammation as well. So increase inflammation, damage the blood vessels. They promote like insulin resistance as well, which is like increases the risk of worsening diabetes. There is a lot of fascinating research on oils, and when we say olive oil, people say, "Oh, okay, how about coconut oil?" Right? This is the magical oil, but there is nothing magical about coconut oil, canola oil, olive oil, any oils. The only oil we should be using is maybe engine oil in our cars. That's it.
So your challenge this week is to get people to cook with 0 oil. So tell us what that looks like in your life. So because I know, you're sauteing things, there's different things that you kind of, you grow up, or at least you're conditioned to think you have to have some sort of fatty medium when you're cooking. So what does that look like to use no oil?
Yeah.
It's actually very hard for people to imagine when you talk about it. Like when we say no oil, people just can't imagine or wrap their head around it, like how to actually do without oil. And there is a lot of resistance, and that's why actually when we made the video, we not only talked about it, we wanted to show them how to do it. So we're gonna explain it to you briefly how to. But if you are listening to this, just go back to that video and watch the video. There, Shobha showed a delicious dish with which was made.
It did look delicious. The curry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looked great.
Yeah. So when it comes like when you want to cook without oil, like it's really hard to conceive, and especially for the Indian population, like where the first step is you add oil, and then you add rest of the things. And I would say it's a habit as well, because as the recipes are passed down the generations, and that's how they have seen their mothers or grandmothers cooking. So they think, okay, maybe I have to use oil. But instead of oil, I mean, like whatever way you're used to cooking, you can follow the same steps and you can take out the oil. For example, if you're making Indian dishes, so the first step, like you're adding oil. So instead of that, you just heat the pan and saute whatever you want to put, either onions, tomatoes, your vegetables, or let's say if you're making a stir fry, is the same step. You put your choice of vegetables, and then you put your stir fry sauce, and whether rice or noodles. So all these things can be done in a similar manner. So if you think your food is sticking, you can definitely use a little bit of water or vegetable broth, or even cooking wine. So there are other things that you can use. But the thing is, when even before, I know, we have proposed a challenge of cooking without oil for 1 week, but like what we really like to do is, we want people to think for a second. I mean, take time, take few seconds to make the decision. So when you're saying, okay, I'm going to cook without oil for my own benefit and also for the greater good, as a gift to the world as well. Because when I'm cooking without oil, it's not only beneficial for me, but it also helps others. Because when my pain comes down, when my inflammation comes down, and when my energy levels are up, I'm more compassionate towards people. My relationships improve. And I'm serving the world with my full potential. So you're actually doing good. And when you set that intention, so that's your first step of motivation. And after that, like, you see how I can cook without oil. So getting the right tools, getting a non-stick pan.
That's very important. Like, having
Yeah.
a good non-stick pan
Really helps.
really helps. Yeah.
Like, we use the Circulon brand, CIRCULON.
But
Yeah.
any non-stick pan, like
Any
the
non-stick pan
will
would
do it.
Yeah.
One other thing is, it's better if you watch a couple of videos how to do it. And even if things stick, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's actually easy to clean. Like, without using oil, it's easy to clean. All you need is just water and a little bit of soap. It's easy to clean the utensils when you're not using the oil.
Yeah.
And like you guys said, you can even use water to saute. You can
Yes.
use
Yeah.
oil. You can use, or no, I'm sorry, you can use vinegar. You can use sauces, vegetable broth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So your website is Gift of Health?
Yeah,
Yes.
Gift of Health.
Giftofhealth.com.
.org. O-R-G.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, giftofhealth.org. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are over 200 recipes there.
Right. I saw that. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Ashwani says, Doctor, that's the most beautiful reason for eating healthfully I have ever heard. Surely never heard that before. If we keep ourselves healthy, pain-free, and energetic, we will be able to serve the world and our families better, which is so true.
Thank you, Dr. Garg.
Yeah. 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 The reason I was saying that, because in our daily routine, that doesn't come to our mind. When you're stressful, you're thinking it's okay for me to use some oil. Like, out of habit, we just do, because we don't see a direct relationship. Because if I'm cooking with oil now, it's not that I'm going to die or I'm going to have an heart attack right now. So people don't associate that with that behavior. So, but when you think in terms of greater good, that really helps even in your stressful situations, because you take a moment, why am I doing this in the first place?
Right. And for me, just the added benefit of better digestion.
Better digestion, and also food tastes good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, oil kind of coats your taste buds. And when it coats your taste buds, you don't taste the flavors and spices and herbs. Like, we have had hundreds of people who came back and said, I can actually taste different flavors in the same food without the oil.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I am on board. I'm taking the challenge. I'm excited about it. I made some soup today, and normally, I eat a whole foods plant-based diet, but I do have some oil in it sometimes, and if I'm sauteing and things like that. And so I made some soup today, and I was sauteing up my vegetables, and I used vegetable broth.
Oh, yay!
And you know what? And the soup is delicious. My husband, who's not really a soup eater, was like, this is really good. So yeah, I feel like it's so much, it's habit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It
You know,
really is.
we didn't include the story, but for Shobha, once we learned about the negative effects of oil, it took a lot of back and forth, and she was so attached to her oil.
It is amazing. Like you said, it's almost like a cultural thing, or
Yeah.
it means something to you to have that fat in your food, and so
Yeah, we grew up with the fried foods. We love fried foods.
Yes.
yeah. Well, we got an air fryer, so that helps too.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and that's one thing. If you figure out ways how to make all your favorite foods, like fries or stir fries, all this stuff that can be made without oil. Once you figure it out, there is a learning curve, like first few weeks, but after that, you'll be happy. And like if you're on medications, you might lower the medications, or you might even drop a few pounds.
Yeah, all of those are amazing benefits. So does anyone else who's here have any questions for the doctors or any comments?
Let's see, look at the chat box.
You guys you've stunned them with all this knowledge. Okay, so Dr. Garg says, I made French fries very simply, and my children and wife love them. Just bake the potato, peel and all, and then after it's soft, cut into French fry shapes. Easy peasy.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. See, one tip that we came up with when we are making fries with potato is especially when you're using a fries like Active Fry, the company recommends to use a spoon of oil. But what we found is, like, when you actually take the potatoes and cut them into French fry shape with a French fry cutter or a knife, and you steam them with a steamer, like in the microwave, for 4 to 5 minutes. So that adds moisture. And you can even put any herbs or spices on it. Like if you want to put garlic powder, onion powder, salt, or garam masala, whatever, you can put that and shake it. All of that sticks, and then you can throw it in the air fryer or Active Fry. So yes, you could even make spiced fries without using any oil.
And that's amazing. Yeah, the baked and especially we like the air fryer because it's so quick. It's so much faster than baking too. So that's been a plus for us.
Okay, yeah, I see here they're baking the potato, but so baking the potato can take longer time.
Yeah.
If you just steam it 4 to 5 minutes, and then it's
perfect. So I don't know if Pete, if you have anything else that you want to say.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful conversation. And the only thing I would add is if people need to find any of you, Doctors Rayapudi or you, Laurie, how would they do that? And one more time for your websites, please. And also a little bit about any programs that you're offering, any support long distance that I'm sure that people would like to know more in case they want to get a hold of you and get some help from you.
Yeah, we are available through the website. And we have a Facebook page, giftofhealth.org. That's one way to reach us, follow us. And we have a book coming up. We are writing the whole thing that we are sharing in the workshop. We are trying to put that workshop in a book. The title of it is Gift of Health. And it's going to come out in like July or August. So that's something that we're excited about.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Ashwin is asking a question, what brands of air fryer do you recommend? Which one? The one,
we had a Tefal, right?
Yeah, Tefal. The one here available in Canada is Tefal, but I'm presuming that might be available in US too.
Yeah, we have Tefal.
Yeah.
I have a, it's just called a Power. The brand name is called Power. But here in the United States, we have a ton of different brands that you can choose from. And from what I can tell, they're all pretty similar. But I know Tefal is a really excellent brand. So I'm sure that's a great recommendation.
And since Ashwin might understand this, like in India, like we make puris. It's like fried Indian bread. So you take dough made from whole wheat flour, and you deep fry it in the oil. So and that's that we
That's
eat
something that we grew up with, but we don't make them anymore.
like we eat for breakfast.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
So that used to be our favorite. So actually, in the air fryer, you can make puris too. So yeah, that would be, and also samosas and all that. So these are Indian dishes. Since Ashwin would understand, that's why I'm mentioning all this. So,
and I know you can Google that too. I mean, if you Googled air fryer samosas or, you know, all of these things, that so many things come up. And so for people who just don't know where to start.
yeah.
It says, so an air fryer may work like a convection oven to brown sliced potatoes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Dr. Garg also said, can you mention the conference in Toronto on June 1st?
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we're going
Yeah.
to be speaking at this
Canadian plant-based.
the first Canadian plant-based nutrition conference.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're gonna speak there on June 1st. And we also got an invitation yesterday to speak at in Ottawa. That's it's called Nation Rising. It's an organization, so we're going to be speaking at that on June 15th in Ottawa.
That's amazing. That's so exciting. One more reason for me to come to Canada.
Yes.
A lot of reasons to
Good
come to
signs.
Canada.
The reasons are building up.
And Newfoundland. Google up Newfoundland. Have it like it's where we are in Newfoundland. It's very beautiful and people are extremely friendly. So summer would be a good time. Yeah.
I would love to do that. So I'm going to see what I can do. That's
so Lori, how can we find you?
So I, you know, for most of us who are in business, there's a million ways to get a hold of us, right? So I do have a Facebook page, which is Plant-Based Weight Loss and Vibrant Health, with Lori DePietro stand-in, and I will type my name in the chat so that you guys see it there. But you can also email me if you're interested at Lori@theinnerstrengthlife.com. I've been doing this. I've been in the wellness industry for about 20 years. I've been doing plant-based nutrition for about 10. And so I will be celebrating my 50th birthday this year. And
congratulations.
and my health was totally transformed. I was also very ill, much like my grandmother, and totally transformed my health on a plant-based diet. So what I do is I run a program to help people adopt a plant-based diet. So that's, I loved being able to talk to you guys because our hearts are so similar in this area. So, but yeah, those are the two main ways you can get a hold of me. So.
That's great. Yeah. I want to thank Peter. Peter, thank you so much for bringing us together.
Yes.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And folks, we have, this is our week 26. You can go to our website, hippocratesdocs.com, and under member library, you can see all the information that went out in this week's email, the videos, as well as the past 25 weeks of interviews and videos and challenges. We've had such a wonderful array of amazing doctors, amazing people. For me, doctors are really wonderful people. They're more giving than most people anywhere. And yet the plant-based doctors are totally in a class beyond that. And so appreciated. I'm so honored to be able to work with such a wonderful group of people and to support this process of changing the world. We absolutely must change this for our health, for the planet, for the animals, for everybody. And like you've said about being able to be our fullest and being able in serving and giving, that's probably part of our mission and probably why we're on earth. So thank you so very, very much for being part of this. And folks, so next week, please look for another challenge by Dr. Michael Goldberg. He's going to speak on fasting. He had a challenge before on water, and I guess we're continuing globally because from Canada we're going to go to Israel next week. So
nice.
And that's at a different time, isn't it, Pete? Is that
yes, and that will be
Yeah.
at a different time. I believe we're going to have that at noon Eastern in the United States. So please watch for that. And if you haven't signed up for our email subscriptions, please do so on hippocratesdocs.com. So thank you everybody for joining, and so appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, doctors.
Yeah. So Peter, I just have one question. So the website, the Hippocrates.com. So in that you mentioned like you have the videos and everything. So is that available to all for everyone to see?
It is. At this time, all the videos are available for free to everybody. And the base subscription for these videos and challenges will always be available. We like people to subscribe so you can get them automatically, but they're on the website and available to everybody. We have committed to a number of the doctors who we've featured and who've participated. They've asked that we not charge for this series. So including Dr. Barnard, who we interviewed, a number of doctors have asked that we give it away. And so we're really happy and honored to be able to feature so many wonderful doctors and to make this available for free to anybody who wants to benefit from all this wonderful information.
And when will this recording be available if people needed to watch it?
The recording from tonight, we usually have it posted in a few days.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, and thank you for having us. And I mean, I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to talk to you guys, and maybe I'll get to meet you in person one day. So.
Oh, yes.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful week, and all the best on everybody's journeys to being healthier and happier and more of service to the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay.